Good morning, guys. Happy Monday. Just wanted to jump on, have a little coffee with you, talk about a few news stories to have on your radar, including one that you may not see a ton about on social media, and I think it's important to be aware of. I'm hiding in the back room because Mighty Mighty construction site is playing too loudly in the living room. So I just wanted to be able to chat with you without that in the background. So the first story I want to talk to you about, we'll start with the most serious first, is Cuba, what's happening in Cuba. Over the last 24 hours, we're seeing a rise in protests there, and this is significant for many reasons. The Wall Street Journal is calling this unprecedented. Remember, Cuba has a communist regime that is the government there. It's been in power for the last 6 decades. And Cuba is confronting a lot of major issues. You have economic hardships, you have high unemployment, you have shortages. I was just pouring Cheerios to my 1-year-old thinking that that's so easy for me to do, but it's not so easy for people to do in Cuba. And so it's a really big deal when the people take to the streets because the stakes are very high. They are going to be put down, and they have been put down with violence. And so this is really important to watch because there's always a question about when is there a tipping point in a country like Cuba where it moves from the people being ruled by the regime to the people actually changing the regime. And that's very difficult to do, but we've seen it done in the past. I want to mention something else to you that I haven't seen a ton talked about in the news. Let me pull up a map. I just want you to see this, okay? Look at where Cuba is in relation to Miami. You can see how close it is. 90 miles is what's usually used. I don't get into nautical miles, right? But you can see just how close it is. The reason why I want to point this out to you and why we should watch this story over the next 24 hours to see where it goes is that if we continue to see this tension build in the street, you're already having the U.S. government talk about support for the people that are in the streets. You have Cuba blaming the United States for stoking the dissent. And remember, the U.S. does have sanctions on Cuba. There's been this relationship with Cuba over the last several years. You've seen different stance by the Obama administration, the Trump administration, and now we're in a new administration, the Biden administration. The reason why I want you to pay attention to this is guess who's good friends with the Cuban regime? Russia. This is a really nice strategic position for Russia to have, right? A friend so close off the coast of the United States. If we continue to watch these protests become bigger, we could see some players involved. And what I mean is other nations really get involved. And there's no telling where it can go from there. So I just want you aware of that. Let me go ahead and take that off. So something to watch. The internet is being shut down in Cuba. So whatever you're seeing on social media, we're getting drips from Cuba, but we are seeing protests of support in Miami, Florida. So that's going to get more attention as well. So watch that story. Next story I want you to be aware of, I'm sure you saw the headlines yesterday about Richard Branson going into space. And I too was like, okay, we got a rich guy going into space. Like, how many rich guys can we have going into space, right? Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson. Like, what is this all about? Why does this really matter? Here's why this really matters. Richard Branson put his money where his mouth is, really. Poured $1 billion into this project. And then he put his life on the line. And he went up to space yesterday. Now, there's a little debate about where space starts. I didn't know this. The United States says it's above 50 miles. Some say it's a little bit higher than that. Looks like Jeff Bezos is aiming a little bit higher than that. But Virgin Galactic, that's where they went. Into just briefly into space in a few moments with a lack of gravity. The reason why this matters is space tourism is here. It's here, it's happening, and we saw that yesterday. So it was important for a few different reasons. Final story, I just want to put you on the radar again for this. It just piqued my curiosity. There's so much talk about COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines. I was reading something in the Journal of Nature yesterday, and this is what I'm going to be looking into on Smarter News, because I always like to pick one story about COVID that I like to learn a little bit more about during this week, and I thought this would be one of them. So obviously, there's talk about those that are choosing to get vaccinated and those that are not. But in the United States, we're able to have that debate because we have vaccine doses, right? So there's a question now about dose stretching, a term I haven't ever heard before, and I certainly haven't used. And it's this idea that you can divide a vaccine dose. So when you're looking to get the right dose for a vaccine, you're looking for the Goldilocks effect, right? You don't want something that's too powerful, toxic, and you don't want something that's not strong enough. And when they were doing vaccine trials for Moderna and Pfizer, they were trying different doses. Well, now some researchers in a very small study took a look at the people that received the smallest doses, and what they're seeing is that they still have an immune response. It may not be as powerful necessarily, and that's what they're looking into, as those that received the quote unquote right amount that they're giving to most people. But the question is, can you fractionalize, if that's the right word, some of these vaccine doses and get them to more people around the world and still give them something, prime their immune system if they choose, right? If that's still something that's available. The reason why I also think this is important, just tying it to the news of the last 24 hours and seeing Dr. Fauci speak out again about those that are choosing not to get the vaccine versus those that have gotten the vaccine, is I'm curious. If you decided that you did not want to get the vaccine, if you were able to get a smaller dose, if you were able to choose that, would that change things for you? Again, that would be a luxury because some people don't even have access to the vaccine, but I'm curious about that part. Dose stretching. What are we learning? What are we learning about the vaccines? Something just to talk about. I see someone saying you couldn't pay me enough to be a space tourist. You know what? I just try to get through every day. I don't know about you guys. Getting through every day is sort of a victory. Launching myself into space for $250,000 isn't really on the top of my list. And that's how much it would cost right now, 15-minute trip up into space. But people are paying it. What a contrast, by the way, in the news, talking about a $250,000 trip into space for 15 minutes versus what's happening in Cuba because there's very basic shortages of electricity and food. And I wonder, coming out of this pandemic, this period where we're ready to launch on a couple different levels, whether it's health and science, technology, or otherwise, what sort of changes we see in culture. What does that look like? So these are some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. All right, guys, I'm going to post this on social media and YouTube. You can always follow all of us on YouTube as well at smarternews.com. Sign up for our newsletter if you haven't. We definitely do some really interesting things at the end of the week and allow you to have a cup of coffee and take a deep breath, which we all need. But I just wanted to get those on your radar, all right? Have a great day. And by the way, I've already written up these stories on Cuba as well as space travel on our website, smarternews.com. And we're doing some more research on the dose stretching just to make sure that we have 100% correct. You know how I am. Double, triple source everything. Have a great day.